July 27th. Would you please join me in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Missoula County would like to acknowledge that this event takes place in the Aboriginal territories of the Salish and Kalispel people. Do we have any public announcements?
Hello, everyone. If you are joining us for this meeting virtually today, instructions for turning on closed captioning are on your screen. If you are joining us in person, we'll have closed captioning on all the screens here in the Sophie Moise room. And we also have assisted listening devices available. Please come to me if you would like one, and we will get one for you. We ask that all speakers today remember to speak slowly and clearly during the meeting. This helps with the accuracy of the closed captioning. There will be multiple chances during the meeting for public comment virtually. During those times, if you would like to speak, we ask that you use the raise hand feature. If you are on Microsoft Teams, this is the small hand button. If you are calling in on the phone, you need to hit *5 to raise your hand. Then once called on, you will need to hit *6 to unmute. Thank you.
I have one other public announcement. That is just that I have to race off at 2:45, but 2 commissioners makes a quorum. So you'll be in good hands without me, but that's where I'm going at 2:45. Do we have any public comment on items not on the agenda? And Travis, this would be you.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, Travis is here. Just want to continue reiterating the need for an all hands on deck approach to the drug crisis. So earlier today, there was a stabbing. I don't know if it's related to drugs, but there was a stabbing by where the Johnson Street shelter will be. That follows a stabbing reported on earlier this week. Now I'm hearing about a hanging in the jail, but that was a couple of days ago. There seems to be a lack of information, a lack of public awareness about the serious drug crisis, the organized criminal element that's within our homeless community, the threat posed to people living in the Kim Williams Trail, as they're reporting to me, cannabis laced with fentanyl. I potentially know the individual who's doing it, but there doesn't seem to be enough information for law enforcement to act. So,
Travis, is your microphone on?
Lord, thank you.
Do I need to say all of that again?
Only what you want to.
Travis Mateer, Missoula resident, out of breath because I biked very fast, obeying all traffic laws to get here, to report that a drug crisis continues to happen. There was a stabbing earlier today. This is within the city limits, but my concern is with jurisdictions, the lack of information sharing, dead bodies. I continue to wonder how they got dead. Overdoses, I continue to wonder if they're actually happening to the degree that's being told to me. Cannabis laced with fentanyl, non-compliant sex offender who commits multiple crimes, but somehow still lives unmolested himself in a green tent beneath the Russell Bridge. I am worried for my own children's sake. I am worried for our community's sake, for people that have houses, for people that don't have houses, that our crisis is not being taken seriously. The city of Missoula wanted to spend, and I think they did, spend $107,000 on a lobbyist. Unnecessary. These priorities are screwed up. We need all hands on deck for the drug crisis. We don't need to be paying a lobbyist who the rest of the state of Montana won't listen to anyways to go talk about whatever housing deregulations are going to be figured out. Drug crisis. That is the problem. That is the risk to economic development. Tourists don't like to be stabbed by knives, or they don't like to stand on hypodermic needles while they're floating the river. Thank you.
Okay, our current claims list. Oh, I'm sorry. Totally. Please, sir. Sorry about that. Thanks.
On here.
No. Hit the little button.
Got the green. You got a green light.
Maybe just make sure your microphone is close to your. There we go.
Okay, Mike Harrison's my name. I have 2 grievances today. One I touch on is the Cheyron fishing access parking on the shoulder of the road out there still. I've spoke with Rasmussen, I've spoke with Zelinkity, I've spoke with Kenny White about it today. And according to them, they all have, I forget the word, the authority to say yes or no, we're going to tow these people. And I spoke with Juanita last week to some extent about it. And it seems to me if as taxpayers, we're going to pay for signage. I know the county doesn't get any part of the tow bill, but the sheriff can be out there writing tickets. I forget the sergeant I spoke with last week late at night about 11 o'clock for zone 2. He told me that the far end of Juniper he doesn't mess with because it doesn't hurt anybody. It's so far removed. So why are we paying as taxpayers to pay for this signage? And my folks live on Marshall Grade. I grew up there, and it's just a nasty mess. There's a lot of money spent to build a new parking area. I called yesterday. I've wore dispatch out with this because I called yesterday, a brand new 1-ton truck, temporary plates with the trailer parked right next to it, brand new Toyota SUV parked right next to it, and nobody goes and does nothing. And Kenny White told me today that the commissioners want to have a soft hand because you guys want to get reelected. And he told me that the commissioners have no say over the sheriff department, and I didn't want to get into it with him about that. I have a meeting with the sheriff next Monday at 11 o'clock if any of you would like to attend, and that brings my next grievance. My next grievance started when TJ McDermott was sheriff. He started letting the deputies move to Valley County. And at that time, I had a friend who was a deputy on the sheriff's department. And I started complaining why the deputies, they have no authority in Ravalli County. I spoke with the Ravalli County Undersheriff on 7/24/23 this week, this week. He said, unless there's mutual aid where they're on shift or mutual aid going south, or unless they're coming to work and there's a big wreck or something, they'll kind of mitigate till Ravalli gets there. He told me that they have had trouble in the past with Missoula County deputies abusing the law enforcement privileges in Ravalli County. He did explain to me that once you go through the academy, you have the right as a law enforcement anywhere in the state of Montana. What my complaint is supposedly with TJ, he allowed them to move 30 miles radius from the courthouse, and I have a map. And anyway, I don't want to know where the cops live because I don't want to be accused of stalking a police officer to find an address and all of that. But what my deal is here, one, I was told when TJ was in that I was pissing people off and to knock it off or I wouldn't like the outcome. So I'm going to make a public record that I don't want to be harassed over this. If a deputy comes on shift, he gets in his car, they were allowed to drive their cars home in Missoula County. As soon as they got in their car, they were on shift. When they're out of Ravalli County, if they go on shift and they have no authority until they hit that county line, legally and technically to the letter of the law, it's theft of public funds because we as taxpayers pay for that. And I'm addressing these issues because I'm an upset taxpayer now. My taxes just doubled. And as county residents, we have an entity within our county that can provide to the coffers of this county. Yes, it might be minimal ticket, it might be minimal funding, but over a large. And when you start taking that these patrol cars don't get good gas mileage, the tires on them are expensive because they're a high mile per hour rated tire. So all of that stuff adds up over a year's time. And I've talked to the auditor across the street about it. And I just, another thing, I beat my head against the wall. I have 8 vehicles registered in this county, and I'm proud of my vehicles. Some of them got a dent in every corner, and some of them I take a lot of pride in. Where you have these people, they got big wide tires, no fender flares, no mud flaps. If I had my semi at the time, DOT would have been all over me about that. But it's an $85 ticket for mud flaps, and it's an $85 ticket for no mud or for fender flares. The highway patrol has changed their white form from $500 to $1,000. I carry full coverage insurance, zero liability. It doesn't cost me anything for glass when I get a rock chip. But now I have to go to small claims court to get that person to pay for that glass because I don't feel that my insurance company should be taking care of that. And the sheriff and the city police, they all say we got bigger and better things to do. So that's my 2 cents. And Mr. Strohmeyer knows how to contact me if you have any more questions regarding anything I've had to say today. So, and you're welcome to go to the meeting with me with the sheriff on Monday. So,
Thanks.
thank you.
Any other public comment? Okay, our current claims list. Claims received as of July 6, 2023 to July 18, 2023 by the Commissioner's Office total $4,487,116.37. We have 4 hearings today. The first one is around the Missoula Rural Fire District, Missoula Rural Fire District annexation, and Karen Baldridge from our Property Records will talk to us about it.
Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Karen Baldridge, Property Records Specialist with the Missoula County Clerk and Recorder. A petition to annex land into the Missoula Rural Fire District has been submitted to the Clerk and Recorder. The property proposed to be annexed is legally described as Parcel 10A of Certificate of Survey 3714, located in the west half of the southeast quarter of Section 4, Township 13 North, Range 20 West. Physical address of the property is 4195 Snowdrift Lane in Missoula. The petition has been signed by the property owners who represent at least 40% of the acreage and 40% of the taxable value of the property to be annexed. And the annexation has been approved by the Board of Trustees for the Missoula Rural Fire District. A notice of hearing has been published twice in the Missoulian, and the property owners have been notified of this hearing. The petition is now presented to the board for your decision.
Thanks. Any questions?
Is there anyone here?
Anyone like to speak on this?
I would move that we approve the petition for annexation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
All right, Matt Heimel's going to talk to us about a resolution of intent to adopt the final Clearwater River flood insurance rate map.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Matt Heimel with the Department of Planning, Development, and Sustainability. I'm a planner and floodplain administrator, and I'll load up a presentation here about our floodplain mapping project.
On the new computer.
Nice.
A new computer, yes. Oh, I need to share, right? Right here. There we go. Okay, so today is a scheduled public hearing on a resolution of intent to amend the floodplain regulations. And the reason we are proposing these amendments is to adopt a final flood hazard determination for the Clearwater River floodplain. These amendments, as I'll go over later, and just want to emphasize a few times, are really limited to updating our reference to a flood insurance study. So for anybody wondering, we're not updating amendments at this time that reflect changed building standards, for example. So in this presentation, I'll provide some background about floodplain risk mapping, flood insurance rate maps. I'll give some history about Missoula County floodplain mapping, and give some information about the Clearwater River flood study, and then explain what this final flood hazard determination is, what the implications are for Missoula County's participation in the National Flood Insurance Program, and then I'll present a motion on the screen for consideration at the end. So the general purpose of floodplain mapping is to help identify the risk, keep people out of harm's way, and reduce flood damage to buildings. The states, counties, cities, towns, and FEMA all work together to identify and reduce flood risks. We do the best we can to map areas at risk of flooding using the best available information at the time. And we don't map every kind of flood or every flood in every location, but we map certain 100-year flood events. But a better way to think of that is that we map areas that have a 1% chance of flooding to a certain extent in any given year. And these maps are not going to show every 100-year event perfectly. There could be localized conditions that can influence the dynamics of flooding in a specific location, which just highlights why it's so important to have continuous updates to our floodplain maps. So the kind of map we use for regulatory purposes and flood insurance evaluation and hazard determinations is a flood insurance rate map, or FIRM. And these identify and communicate areas of flood risk. They're used by developers, the public, property owners, emergency managers, and different cities and counties throughout the country where they do participate in the NFIP. They're used for various building standards as they're enforced through our floodplain regulations. We also reference floodplain maps when we look at subdivisions, zoning, or any kind of a sanitation review in proximity to a waterway. And in exchange for regulating and reviewing these maps, Missoula County, as a participating community in the National Flood Insurance Program, has federally backed flood insurance coverage available to county residents and property owners. And these maps are also used by insurance agents to determine flood insurance premiums through risk rating analysis, and by mortgage companies to determine if a home they're financing has a risk of being flooded. So again, maps need to be periodically updated to reflect the best available data at the time, and if there's been change in an area, both in terms of the development pattern or the hydraulic patterns. So Missoula County has had floodplain maps since 1974, and at that time they were a different kind of map. They were either flood hazard, flood boundary, floodway boundary maps. They've gone through some different changes over the years. The last large update we had countywide was in 2015, and at that time we moved into digital flood insurance rate maps. But a key part of that update was that we took the older paper maps and converted them to a electronic format with no new flood study. So the topic for today is the Clearwater River floodplain, and the Clearwater River floodplain before the current update was based on data collected in 1977. On the screen here, the Clearwater area shows 1983, which would be the effective date for that flood insurance study, but needless to say, it's pretty out of date and warrants the update that we're looking at for final inclusion into our floodplain regs. So the Clearwater River floodplain study has been going on for some time. Back in 2012, the effort started with LIDAR collection with Watershed Sciences. LIDAR is light detection and ranging, so that's a remote sensing method to get a better topographic picture of the Earth's surface using pulse lasers from an aircraft to get highly detailed data. And then the hydrology analysis was completed by the Montana Department of Natural Resources and Conservation in 2017. And in the most general sense, that was analyzing how much water would be anticipated to come down the river during a 100-year flood event. And that was largely done using stream gauge data. Then between 2018 and 2019, Michael Baker International was contracted by DNRC to complete the hydraulic analysis. And in that part of the study, the hydrology information was then input into a floodplain model software to determine where that water will go, how it will get there, and essentially how it will behave with various factors during a specific flood event. And through those analyses, we obtained preliminary flood insurance rate maps in 2021 that reflected updated flood fringe and floodway boundaries in addition to the 500-year floodplain. Those preliminary maps were again available as of 2021. In 2022, preliminary flood insurance rate maps were adopted as best available data for regulatory use by the county. And all along, we've had an interactive map made available, and we could access that today if there are any specific areas that we'd like to see. We also have access to all of the final floodplain docs, such as the flood insurance rate map and the flood insurance study. So, and to summarize the main changes for properties, there's a total of 222 parcels that are affected by the update to the Clearwater flood insurance rate map. And some of these were already in the floodplain, so specifically 180 parcels remain in the special flood hazard area, and 22 parcels were brought into the special flood hazard area. And based on information from DNRC, when this was reviewed as best available data, no structures were brought into the floodway, which is good news.
Yeah, just looking at the map, there's 20 other parcels then, right? Did I do that wrong?
So 20, based on our GIS.
How many? It was 222 right now, right?
I thought 180, 22 joined.
But it was 222 right now, used to be 180 and 22 joined. So there's another 20 that came from somewhere.
You're right. Those could be parcels that are in a shaded X or 500-year floodplain only zone. I will have to get clarification for you on this because I'm going off of information that we had from a GIS analysis that was run, and I put that into my notes. But what I have is 180 remaining in the SFHA, 22 moved in, but I did mention 222, which does not seem to add up yet.
Add up, but
yeah, my suspicion is those may be parcels you can see in the top as a kind of a yellowish color, which is pretty hard to see, but those could be 500-year floodplain parcels that would not be considered special flood hazard area.
Okay.
So I think we do have a second public hearing on August 28th, and I'll be sure to have a really clear picture of those numbers for the structures of that at that time as well.
Good math.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll speak generally about our floodplain regs and how those work, since that is the topic for our amendments at this time. And these are very general notes. There's a lot of nuance that we'd be happy to talk with about anyone at any time. But in general, Missoula County has floodplain regulations that regulate new development in the 100-year floodplain. We also potentially regulate areas in a shaded X flood zone if they are below a certain elevation threshold. Floodplain permits are required for new construction and modification for existing structures in the regulatory floodplain. And when someone is interested in building a new house or an alteration to their house, new residential construction must be elevated 2 feet above the flood elevation, and there are floodproofing requirements for commercial construction. And also, if there is any improvement that's valued over 50% of a market value, that's considered a structural, or excuse me, a substantial improvement, and that can require the full structure to be brought into compliance. So there are many nuances in the floodplain regulation. So bottom line, it's always a great idea for someone to contact the planning office to get a full understanding. And also, these floodplain maps have a direct role in determining flood insurance requirements and flood insurance rates. So in some very general terms, if a structure is in a high risk zone, the lender may require purchase of flood insurance. And if a property is in the special flood hazard area, flood insurance is a mandatory requirement for any kind of federally backed mortgage. If a structure is in a lower risk zone, flood insurance may not be mandatory, but it can be recommended. However, a lender can require flood insurance at any time for any reason at their discretion.
Matt, so would a lower risk zone be like within the 500-year floodplain? What would be an example of that?
Correct. Yeah, an example of a lower risk zone is either shaded X floodplain that might have some shallow inundation during the 100-year flood, or the 500-year floodplain, or in a fringe area that might not be necessarily mapped as floodplain per FEMA, but the lender or mortgage company might have information to show that it's at risk. So again, it's one of the things that comes down to their discretion.
Okay, thank you.
And as a last note, flood insurance is also available to renters for contents coverage. So the main impetus for having these hearings at this time and adopting amendments to the floodplain regulations in a specific time frame is based on a final flood hazard determination letter that Missoula County received from FEMA last April. And according to that flood hazard determination, the updated flood insurance study and flood insurance rate maps for the Clearwater River will be effective on October 5th of this year. That means that as of October 5th, not only are the maps effective for regulatory use, which we have already adopted, but also for any kind of insurance ratings or for determinations by a lender for insurance requirements. There was a 90-day statutory appeal period before the finalization of the flood hazard analysis. FEMA did not receive any appeals or submittals regarding the Clearwater River map products during that appeal period. So the appeal period elapsed, and there were no changes from the preliminary firm to the final firm. And as a last note, just to make sure it's absolutely clear, as a condition of continued eligibility in the National Flood Insurance Program, Missoula County must adopt floodplain regulations that meet minimum federal and state standards with reference to the updated flood insurance study. And that goes back to kind of the foundation of the National Flood Insurance Program, which is that the federal government provides the floodplain maps and flood hazard, and then the community in turn enforces to those floodplain maps, and then flood insurance and disaster aid can be made available to the community. So the amendments that we're considering to the floodplain regulations are fairly straightforward and largely have to do with dates and references to the flood insurance study. We have various references to the adoption date, which is tentatively scheduled for August 28th. That's our second public hearing. Updates to a couple of pages that directly reference the flood insurance study date of October 5th, 2023. And also removing a section that reference the preliminary flood insurance rate maps because they will not be preliminary. As of October 5th, they will be final. And again, no changes to development or construction standards with this round of updates to the floodplain regulations. So that concludes the presentation information I have. I'm happy to take any questions about the firm, the FIS, or our floodplain program as a whole. And I also have a motion that can be brought up as well.
Thanks, Matt. You bring up a motion?
Sure.
No, because we don't have a choice in this matter. I move to approve. Oh,
Oh, do we have
Sorry.
any public comment on this?
thank you. I move to, oh, there is.
And all right. Number 16. Please.
Yes, my name is William Inglesby, and I'm a property owner on the Clearwater River. I'm somewhat dismayed to learn about this study and also the proposal to amend the floodplain plan. First off, I live about a mile south of the outlet from City Lake on the Clearwater River. My property is on a high bank of the Clearwater River. It's probably 15 or 20 feet above the river. It would take, in my opinion, a rainfall of 40 days and 40 nights for my property to experience any flooding of the Clearwater. And this is, of course, the first I've heard that I'm going to be apparently included in this floodplain regulations. One consequence is obviously flood insurance, which probably will end up costing me thousands of dollars, and in my view, will be used by the federal government to subsidize flood repair damage done along places like the Mississippi River, which seems to flood every year and wipe out people who build their property or structures right on the banks of the river. I think it's extremely unfair that I have to subsidize that circumstance. And again, I don't, the gentleman said that the appeal period for the FEMA map has expired. I never got any notice from FEMA or the county or anybody else that of this period of appeal. And of course, I'm not sure there was any public notice of it, probably designed to keep people from appealing it. But I, for one, protest strenuously being included in this proposal. It's unnecessary in my circumstance. And I've been living on the Clearwater for 17 years. Of course, not the requisite 500 or 100 years, but I've never seen the Clearwater flood to any extent, causing any property damage. And again, obviously, the Clearwater River at this location is buffeted by Seeley Lake, and above that, Lake Inez. So I just think that this is extremely unfair.
Please.
And Cheryl, I don't know if you can work with someone to try to get our audio system working. We're just hearing it through your computer over there, not through the room. But anyway, we were able to read the comments on the screen here. Question, Matt. So is there any, in a case like this, unless an individual has a presumably a mortgage, is there any requirement that you have to have flood insurance? If you own your property outright, are not in any sort of a lending arrangement that would require you to have insurance, and I don't know what the situation is of the individual who is speaking here, but there's no, I'll just phrase it as a question. Is there a mandate that you must have insurance?
As far as I know, it's only if you have a mortgage, right?
So William wouldn't.
He
have
doesn't,
to-
if he owns his property outright. He doesn't
So,
have to do anything.
so William, if you're still there and listening, are you in a situation where you own your property outright without a mortgage? And you're muted.
Muted.
Yes,
There you
I
go.
own my property outright, but I'm in the process of contemplating expanding my structure and building a garage workshop on the property. I might have to finance that. And of course, that would entail the mandatory flood insurance. Beyond that, these regulations where if I make any improvement to my property that's deemed to be substantial, I'm going to have to, I don't know, raise my entire cabin 2 feet to prevent the floodwaters creeping up this 20-foot elevation to flood my property.
So, William, I'm going to try something out here. Maybe Matt can help with this. You said your home is built on a high bank, and it would take biblical rains, if I interpreted you correctly, to cause a flood, which if I understand right, you could challenge the elevations. You could say, actually, my house is high enough that I'm out of the floodplain, and that which entity did this? Is this who did the LiDAR, Matt?
The LiDAR again was
Not the contractor, but who paid for it?
I believe Missoula County and with DNRC.
I think it's a DNRC thing. It's not a countywide thing.
Okay.
I'm pretty positive we don't do that. I'm pretty sure it's DNRC.
Sure.
So Jamie might know the answer. I think he could challenge DNRC and say, you got the elevations wrong, and my house is actually out of the floodplain. And I don't know that he would be correct or he would be incorrect, but I do think he would have the opportunity to do that.
Or has that ship sailed though?
So
We're doing biblical references here.
Yeah, okay.
the appeal period is over for this, so it wouldn't be a matter of contesting the technical data from it. And just a point of clarification, the only reason I said that Missoula County paid was just I had notes from DNRC a few years ago saying Missoula County contracted, so perhaps the financing worked out differently in a way that I'm personally not
Sure.
We're
aware
appealing
of.
two different things. Like William needs
Yeah.
to appeal his specific project.
Yes.
This appealing, like the whole map is the
Right,
question before
right,
us.
right. And
And that ship has sailed.
So the remedy at this time, because these maps will be final on October 5th. I tried looking in our property information for Williams property, didn't come up with it. It'd be good to have the address, but there's a lot of nuance here. You may have received the letter because the property was affected, so it might not be that the house itself. We just have to look at the map. However, once the flood maps are effective, William can work with a surveyor. There are options for letters of map change with FEMA to remove either a portion of the property or a structure from the special flood hazard area. Yeah.
so could we say that, just to see if this statement is correct, is it possible that Williams' property is affected, but not his home? That he may own property on this high bank, but he may own property all the way down to the level of the river, and the piece right next to the river could very well be in the floodplain. So his property's affected, but his home is not actually affected because his home is up higher, or where he wants to do his expansion. Is it possible to say the property, but not the entirety of the property?
Yes, that could be the case. We would just need to see where it is and what the full circumstances.
And when you say Missoula County does that work, or?
Well, if I know the address or geocode or tax ID, we can look at it in the floodplain maps and we can work with William so that he has a full understanding of the situation.
So it may be the case.
The address is 227 West Peacemaker Court. It's lot 196. But the commissioner is correct. My property extends out to the center of the Clearwater, but that's at the low portion of the property. The property goes up the bank, and my cabin is on the top of the high bank. So I guess my property underneath the river would be exposed to a biblical flood, but I don't think there's any chance that my actual physical structure would ever be.
I have it on the map.
Okay.
And what's disappointing is, now I'm told that this determination is set in stone and it's going to happen October 5, 2023, and I've had no chance to appeal.
It's the floodway.
That's appears to be the correct.
So when we're looking at an image of your property right now, and the edge of it along the river is indeed in the floodway, but it looks like 4/5 of the property is not in the floodplain or in the floodway. And it very well may be the case that your home and area of potential expansion is also in that same area, in which case it isn't going to affect you.
In fact, it looks like with absolute certainty, the structure depicted on the map is not
high and dry.
It's not in the floodplain. The flood.
So unless you decide to build something on the chunk of property that's in the floodplain, you will be all right.
Okay, well that's very comforting, because whoever had that cursor there was approximate location of my cabin. And again, it's on the top of this high bank.
The image we're looking at, the
Right
top of the
there.
high bank is out of the floodway and the floodplain.
Okay. So that means I'm not subject to the new building regulations and.
As long as you don't decide to build something in the floodplain or floodway, your current building is not in the area we're talking about.
Okay, I withdraw my protest.
Yeah, thanks for calling, and I'm glad we could clear it up.
Thank you.
We aim to please here at Missoula County.
Thank you Matt, for getting that up.
Thanks, Matt.
It's just this room.
It's okay. Thanks for helping with that explanation, Matt.
Sue Ostertag.
Hi,
Okay.
everyone. Thank you for providing this information. I'm curious now that we saw that lot shown on the map, if you could also show the property that I lease from DNRC at 2781 Highway 83 North.
We're working on it.
Have it up, just need to share the screen. World of Teams.
He's in.
So is that circle the house?
We have a question.
The circle, her structure.
The circle is for the address point in our GIS. There's a little bit of transparency. You can see the structure just north of it. My cursor is over a structure.
It
that I
sure
can
does
see.
look like the entirety of the property is either in floodplain or floodway.
That is correct. The entire property is within the special flood.
Unlike
aspect.
Williams' property where a portion was in floodplain, floodway, but the rest of it was not.
Very good, thank you.
Have any other questions? Please, come on up, sir. Oh, come on up. You have to speak into the microphone and make sure it's on. You get a little green light at the base.
All right. Pre Fernando is my name, and we have a cabin up at 1702 Snowmass Drive. And so the new map designation shows that the cabin, the 100-year floodplain, is on an elevated basis, but it's the structure is within that designated area. So my question is, we've been thinking about remodeling this cabin. This was built in 1960. As long as, if I heard Matt correctly, if it's elevated 2 feet, there's the possibility that it can be remodeled. Is that what I heard? Or I'm not putting you on the spot for building regulations, but just a general question.
And if I understand this correctly, it's not 2 feet above the height that it is right now. It's 2 feet above.
Above the floodplain.
So it really depends on the elevation. It could be that the elevation literally of the earth where your cabin is
Yeah.
7 feet underneath water if there was a 100-year floodplain, which means you'd have to elevate it 9 feet,
Right.
not just 2 feet from where it is. So elevations are exactly where the cabin is. And as Dave pointed out, this is a matter of financing too. If you own your cabin outright, it's 100% yours. It's up to you what you want to do. If the bank owns part of it, then you have to get flood insurance.
Yeah. No, I understand that part of it. I'm a banker.
Oh, sorry, sir.
So
I stand corrected.
So yeah, we own the property outright.
Then you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, in fact.
Within
he was-
reason.
Not.
No, Bailey has something to say.
No, I was more
Shine some
just like
light.
within reason. I'm like, wait, he still needs a floodplain permit. No, that's all I was.
It's on the record that Josh Slot.
Anything you want. Paint it
Anything you
fuchsia,
want,
go for it.
yeah. All
So,
right.
so explain what the floodplain permit would mean.
I'll let
for
Matt
Bree.
do it. I was just making
Okay.
it.
So what could Bree do if he wants to do some remodeling on his cabin?
Sure, that's a great question. So first of all, the property is in flood fringe area, zone AE floodplain. So we can permit a residential structure or alteration to a residential structure. If there's going to be structural alteration, that all the points before were right. Any new floor area would need to be elevated 2 feet above the base flood elevation, in addition to all the mechanical, electrical.
And you said any
equipment there.
new.
Yeah, so a alteration area. Now, let's say that there's not going to be, I don't know the full details, but for example, someone may choose to do an interior remodel, but not a new structural expansion. We would still look at the value of that work, because over a 10-year period, if there is work or improvement to the structure that exceeds 50% of the market value over that 10 years, then the entire structure would need to be brought into compliance with the floodplain standards. So bottom line, there are a lot of nuances that go into it, but the overall answer is yes, work can be done in the floodplain, provided it meets our certain standards that are intended to mitigate the risk of being in a flood zone.
Great. Thank you.
Good luck, Bree.
Thank you.
I'm going to leave you on more capable hands.
Good luck.
Okay.
Go for it.
Is there any other public comment, either online or in the room? Okay, thanks for everyone who did participate. We'll close the public hearing. Matt, do you want to pull up the motion again?
Yes. Oh, sorry.
I'd move to approve the resolution of intent to amend the Missoula County floodplain regulations, adopting final flood hazard determinations for the Clearwater River.
Second that. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Matt, so when will, oh, there it is. Next steps. Additional 30 days for public comment. Public hearing on final resolution will be on August 28th, presumably at 2 p.m. in this very room. And there is the effective date. Okay. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
Commissioners, can I say one thing?
Yes.
We're done with this.
Uh,
I don't pretend to know very much about the floodplain, but as Matt pointed out, almost all of it comes to us directly from the state and federal government, and we don't have much choice. And so, you know, our regulations, you listen to Matt make that explanation about, you know, the 50% over 10 years, and you think, gosh, man, how did Missoula County come up with that? Well, we didn't come up with it. It's, you know, it's been sent to us from above, and it's our job to implement it.
Thanks for saying that.
That's just part of the program.
And that was our very own Deputy County Attorney, John Hart. Thank you, John. All right, we will move into our third public hearing. This is on the West Point subdivision condition amendment. Thank you, folks, for joining. And we have a staff report from Bailey.
Okay, I was just waiting for my screen to pop up here. 1 second. Okay, good afternoon, commissioners. For the record, my name's Bailey Minnick. I'm a planner with the Planning Development and Sustainability Department. I am here to talk about the West Point subdivision conditions, CC&Rs, which is the conditions, covenants, and restrictions, and their trail and landscape plan amendment.
The property, okay. The property is right here. This is the whole subdivision. So this part here was part of the subdivision that had been platted already. I'll get into that. But it's basically near the corner of Butler Creek Road and Gooden Lane, just on the other side of Highway 90. So some background of the project. The subdivision was originally approved back in May of 2001, subject to 32 conditions of approval. 2 conditions were added at a later date. I think I had 2009, but that might be a typo. It might have been 2006 and 2016. It's for 240 lots total, residential lots, on a little over 72 acres. It was approved as a phase subdivision. Phase 1, as I mentioned, had been filed. It was filed in 2004, and phases 2 and 3 were combined into what was then called phase 4 in 2018. And phase 4 actually is comprised of 4 sub-phases that they split out into kind of smaller pieces. So phases 4 and 5, with all those sub-phases, have a final plat submittal deadline of June of 2024. There have been too many to list, numbers of plat adjustments, condition amendments, phasing plan modifications over the years. The last one came to the commissioners here in December of 2021. And that was kind of the impetus for this trail and landscape plan. We knew at that time that this was going to need to be amended. And so they've been in the works doing that since then. So as I mentioned, the applicant is requesting to amend portions of their CC&Rs, which are their private covenants. And part of those CC&Rs have different exhibits, and that's part of what they're requesting to amend are those specific exhibits. There's 6 conditions of approval that need to be amended. And then ultimately the trail and landscape plan that was approved for the subdivision, and that was done in 2006. And so part of that is they're modifying locations and some of the amounts of some of the different trail types. Overall, the total amount of trails would be reduced from 6,598 linear feet to 5,734. Of those totals, there's multiple different class types. Class 1 are really kind of the core, what I say we, but it's really parks and trails and open lands that kind of gave me these definitions. But core trails are class 1. Those are what your 8-foot wide, paved, really nice, big trails. Class 2 tend to be more like connector trails that can be about 5 feet wide, can be gravel, can be paved. They're kind of the middle road trails. And then the class 3 are kind of the low impact. And those are about 3 feet wide, more gravel, kind of smaller connector trails. Additionally, they're proposing to amend some of the locations of the picnic tables, some of the play structure location, rest area benches, and put those in some more places conducive to the topography. The change to the trail plan will require revisions to what they call the management plan for restoration of the draw. That's really their riparian area plan. And that's including the removal of some trails within the steeper portion of the riparian area and putting in some more native trees and shrubs into their planting schedule. Let's see. So this is a screenshot, and I know it's kind of blurry to read. It was the best I could kind of get at the scale, but generally here, the 3 different types. This blue here is really that class 1 trail, that core trail, what I was describing. The things that are in yellow here are the class 2 trails, and then the green are the class 3 or those low impact trails. The majority of the trail amendments are in response to the naturally steep topography of the development. And these amendments will take advantage of the more accessible areas. And as I mentioned, protecting the riparian space. So this kind of green area here is that riparian draw that they have the restoration plan for. The trail systems will also create better connectivity by creating a loop system and eliminate some of the trails that did not connect to the system-wide development. In places where there are no proposed trails, they are proposing sidewalk connections along the street to provide more suitable and safer connections to that larger trail system. Let's see here. I might just leave this slide up just because it's a little nicer to see. So originally when the subdivision was proposed in 2001 and approved, the required trail system was proposed instead of installing sidewalks within the internal subdivision road. The trails were originally proposed to be flat 5 feet wide within 20-foot easements. There was a 2006 revision to this trail plan that added some curbside sidewalks in lieu of removing some of a class 1 trail. And that was part of a modified condition number 16 in 2006. I guess I'll go to the next slide here too. So I'm going to kind of talk about the condition amendments. So there are 6 affected conditions of approval that need to be amended if the trail plan is proposed or is approved. So there are some minor changes to conditions 10, 22, and 24, and then some major changes to conditions 14 and 16, and then completely deleting condition 32. And I'm going to kind of explain those here in a second. So as I mentioned, the revision in 2006 to the trail plan added a modified condition 16. That's the condition that they're proposing to change at this time. Most of the language that was added in 2006 would be removed. And that's because a lot of what was in that condition is being put into the actual trail plan. And so they're inserting a new sentence requiring all improvements to be installed prior to filing of the phase 4A final plat, the next phase that would be coming in. The changes to condition 14, that one's really specific to specific widths and grade requirements for different sections of the trail. And those basically don't become pertinent if this new trail adoption or trail plan amendment is proposed. Let's see. Condition 10 is related to grading and drainage plans for the subdivision. And they're just proposing to insert language that this condition be met prior to every final plat approval of each phase, rather than just phase 1, because phase 1's already been platted. And then deleting condition, condition 22 would be updating the date for the riparian plan to the current, what's being proposed and adopted today. Condition 24 is just replacing some wordage between phase 1 and phase 4A. And then condition 32, the one that's proposing to be deleted, that one was for some stairs that were proposed between a couple of the phases, but that would actually, they're proposing to get rid of those stairs, and so that condition basically, it would become a trail instead of stairs, so that condition becomes not pertinent anymore. Just so everybody knows, the proposed condition amendments do not modify the location of any of the required parkland or common areas, as they're already common areas, and as such, they continue to count to the overall parkland. So while they're moving some of the park structures, it's still, nothing's changing. It was common area, it's staying common area, and things are moving in that sense. So this project is kind of unique because we're actually reviewing it under 2 different sections of our regulations, subdivision regulations. One is the adjustments to preliminary plats and related documents, which is for the portion of the subdivision that hasn't been final platted yet. So phases 4 and 5 and those subphases. And then also the section in chapter 6 on adjustments to filed plats and related, because phase 1, as I mentioned, has been final platted already. The criteria is actually the same for both, but it's technically 2 sections. And what we're reviewing is is that the amendments are minor in nature with compared to the entire subdivision. They won't reduce any safeguards or protections. They won't be creating any new impact or increasing any previously recognized impact, and they're consistent with the findings of fact and conclusions adopted by the original subdivision. So we did notice advisory agencies. I only had one comment. It came in from our own Parks Department. And basically, sorry, my watch is going off. They commented that the updated trail plan appears to provide a higher level of connectivity compared to the original. They did support the tread width for the Class 3 trails being set at 3 feet, as that adds a heightened assurance for accessibility and mitigates concerns over long-term maintenance with weeds and things growing in and shrinking those trails down. And then they recommended that the playground be designed and installed by a certified playground professional. And I will note that the consultants and the property owners have been working with the county and with the Parks Trails Department well before this request for agency comment. This was really the formal comment, but they've been working with the county over the last year to kind of get to this point. So we did do a legal notice in the paper. We posted the project on Missoula County Voice. Adjacent property owner notifications are not required for condition amendments. But I did get one comment in support. Actually, I just sent it to Robin and Jamie over there. It came in at like 1:45 today. So the BCC admin staff just forwarded it to us, and it was in support. It's quite a long comment. It's really a really nice comment in support of the trails and the connectivity and seeing it for their subdivision. So that's it for my presentation. We are recommending approval. Obviously, I do have a motion, but I know Robin with WGM does have a presentation, and so I would like to hand it over to her unless you have any comments or questions for me at this moment.
None at this moment. Okay. So come on up to the microphone and introduce yourself, Robin.
We got green. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, I'm Robin Spear with WGM Group. I'm the senior landscape architect and part of the team that helped redevelop the trails plan. And I'm here with Jamie Urbacher, our senior planner. And I believe Ryan Salisbury is on. He was online also if we have any questions for civil. This kind of repeats what Bailey just said, but if you want to flip to the first slide, we'll look at context again. And again, it's just north of Highway 90 and north of Gooden Lane. I don't know if you're familiar with Circle H, but we're right just south of Circle H. And the structures you see right now are the current phase 1 housing that has been developed. Okay, so Bailey kind of gave you an overview of the history of the project, but I'll pick up on 2021, where they had a revision to the subdivision agreement for phase 1 approved on November 16th, or I'm sorry, I think again in December, written in on November, revised on November, approved in December, but it laid out an agreement with a cost estimate for the phase 1 improvements at $149,677. And just for reference, our current cost estimate now for phase 1 is $153,579. So we're just slightly above what the initial agreement cost was. So we're really fortunate enough. Usually we don't have an existing community when we start developing our trails and our park plans. So it was really nice to be able to reach out to parks and reach out to the community and have a collaborative effort in this redesign. So we started off in February of last year. We kicked it off with the county just to review the existing plan and some of the key feedback points we got during that meeting. And I believe Bailey, you were in that meeting also. Concerns of accessibility along trails and the playgrounds. Because this site is the topography is very challenging. It's very steep in certain areas. We want to make sure that a majority or a good part of the trail is accessible. We look at, age groups between 8 and 80 when we are designing. So if it's feasible for both, we consider it successful. We reviewed the connections between the phases. and looked at where the issues were, looked at current grading plans and what has been done on the site. We looked at cost offsets and balances, and then we looked at our outreach strategy and the approval of developing a steering committee.
We just lost.
And we just lost.
Oh, okay.
So we kicked off the neighborhood outreach in March with a neighborhood meeting. We met on site and we walked through the development as much as we could. There was snow on the ground, so we couldn't get to everything. But the key feedback points we got from that discussion in that walk was the neighborhood really wanted continuous trail loop system with benches and improved connectivity, particularly on the north side of the property. Initially, the agreement had exercise equipment, and there was exercise equipment in the plan, but from feedback we got that nobody wanted the exercise equipment and they'd rather switch over and put that money towards the trail system. There was park equipment in the original, but it was spread out. And again, it was mainly concentrated on the south side of the property. And we thought distributing that between all the phases would be a better option for safety and accessibility. Maintenance and HOA liability came up, so we can address that later. But that was definitely a concern as we were developing what type of park equipment to go in there. Again, more trails in the northern development section of the development. That's where a majority of the people walk their dogs. So they wanted to see more connectivity up north. And then again, a concern of some of the areas they noticed were wet, but I believe, I don't know if Andrew's online, that has been addressed now, particularly in the phase 1 park. So we followed that up with a survey. We had 63 responses, great responses. So again, the main focus was walking, running, and hiking was the preferred activity for the neighborhood. Trails and playground were preferred amenities. No fitness stations, again, that was reiterated. And then looking at maintenance costs and liability were a big concern for the improvements, particularly the playground. We met again with Parks and Trails in April to go over a draft plan that was developed from the feedback. Got more feedback from them. We looked at increasing the 2-foot wide class 3 to a 3-foot wide, which we did. We talked about playground safety and locations of the playgrounds. We moved some of the class 2 trail that was north of the road south, so it wasn't right behind some of the future 4A lots, 4A and 4C lots. We recognized that topography was limiting, so not everything could be ADA accessible. And we talked about the riparian restoration and management. So from there, we had a stakeholder meeting where we kind of honed in on specific elements that were going to be in the playground. Again, they wanted a natural feel to the playground, not a real prescriptive equipment in there, kind of going back to the feel of the topography, the feel of the development, minimizing liability, and really like the climbing activities that we proposed. We had another survey just to back that up. We wanted to look at what elements everybody really wanted out of, we honed that down into 3 specific ones. They picked wood and recycled benches again to go to match that natural feel out there, and with square picnic tables. So great feedback, lots of input, but it was nice to have them pick out specifically what they would like to see in the development. Then in December, we followed up with the final plan during the HOA meeting. Andrew reviewed the maintenance costs that we developed. We reviewed the schedule of the improvements, and just a breakdown between the approved and the proposed costs. So we, depending on the results today, and if we get approved, they are literally ready to start this month or next month. So they're excited, and Andrew's ready to get going. So just to kind of reiterate what was in the existing plan, and I'll have Bailey kind of flip through this. I know the plan's hard to read, so I have some arrows to help us out. So some of the key concerns, trails were located in areas behind the homes and in future drainage areas. You can flip there, there, and there. Minimal access to the northern portion, so we increased that. So that was the main trail access to the north. Trails were located in steeper riparian areas that I know is a concern for restoration and protection. And then the play and fitness elements were kind of placed randomly all over the place. So you'll see in the next plan that we've consolidated those and made it safer and easier to access. So this is the proposed trail and riparian master plan that Bailey just presented. So what we've changed, we kept the class 1 route from MacArthur Drive down to Gooden Lane, and that's class 1, that'll be an 8-foot wide trail, asphalt trail. We've condensed the park amenities into 3 areas for easier access between all the phases. We have more protection now in the riparian area, so we can try and enhance that more, protect and restore what's there. We have an expansion of the class 3 trails up in the north for better connectivity as requested by the neighbors. We have a continuous, and the blue dash is the whole trail system. So you can kind of see how it connects throughout all the phasing. And then we did increase the class 3 trail width from 2 feet to 3 feet wide. So those are some site photos so you can kind of get an idea of the topography of the site. The lower right is the first park to go in. That is your phase 1 park area. And from feedback from the neighbors, this is one of the few places that is flat enough to put a lawn area. And all the kids go there right now to play soccer, play ball. So they really wanted to keep that open as much as possible. And to address Parks comments in their letter, the next slide, we've detailed out the phase 4A park, as you can see on the right. The phase 1 park that he had concerned about is really, we didn't have current topo and the lawn area, and there was an issue with it being wet that I think was a broken irrigation pipe. So that's been fixed, but that's going to be a field fit. And again, we'll go back to the neighborhood and see where they want to put the benches and picnic tables, because there was a request for a place where everybody could gather and have a barbecue or come together and have an event. There was one request from the family that has a lot right on the corner, not to put it too close to theirs. So we feel it'd be more appropriate to get everyone together and see what felt best there. So, and then we did have, in lieu of the fitness equipment, we decided to put educational signs that kind of tell the history of the site, and look at some of the wildlife, look at some of the vegetation that's out there. So we've developed just some ideas where, there you go. As I get 2 ideas for those elements, just to make it, reduce maintenance costs and make it feasible to replace it pretty quickly. And then our graphic designer, our in-house intern, developed the graphics to the right that we could utilize. That's just kind of a standard we could utilize to
There's
back
not
to
a river
the
that
neighbors
goes
and
through the
see what they
property.
want to put on. Yeah. So it'd be interesting to see what wildlife is coming through right now and what they're seeing, and kind of describe that in more detail. But we're really excited. We're ready to get going, and I think the neighbors are excited to have the trails come in.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you for the thorough presentations, Robin and Bailey. Bailey, anything else? Or want to queue up the motion?
No, I can definitely do that. And then I guess just ask if any public comment online.
Yes, we will. Is there anyone left in the room who would like to comment on this, or anyone online? Ryan, anything you want to add?
No, I don't think so. Robin covered it. Thank you, commissioners.
Okay, thank you. All right, seeing no public comment, I would entertain a motion.
Yeah, I move to approve the West Point subdivision conditions, CC&Rs, and trail and landscape plan amendment based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law in the staff report, and subject to the master conditions of approval as modified.
Second, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much. And Thanks, WGM, for your presentation. One thing that I would just like to convey to you guys as kudos, and also if any other folks in the development community are out there, I love photos. So the photos that you used, not just the aerial, but actual photos that show the areas of the subdivision or landscape under consideration are super helpful, especially since we can't always get out there and the aerials are of limited value to get a sense of the topography. So thank you for that. Okay. Our fourth and final public hearing today is the Peterson Industrial Park Utility Easement Petition.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Sam Scott with the Clerk and Recorder's Office. Today I have a little bit of an atypical petition from those that you usually see from our office. It is a petition to vacate a public utility easement. The public utility easement is 20 feet wide and encumbers lots 3 and 4 of Peterson Industrial Park, shown right here on the exhibit submitted with the petition. The petition was signed by the landowners and easement releases were submitted by 4 or 5, I can't remember, potential beneficiaries of the easement. There has also been submitted, along with the petition, 2 new electrical easements that would be filed along with the resolution abandoning or vacating this easement if approved. The notice of this hearing was posted in the Missoulian twice, as well as mailed to the landowners and those potential beneficiaries. We haven't received any comments, and it's presented to you for your decision. We don't have a specific process for this type of petition, so we're using somewhat of an amended road vacation petition process, but I know Jamie is here if there's any questions. But that's all I've got.
Okay, thanks, Sam. Anything you'd like to add? Jamie? Okay, Jamie Erbacher says that Sam covered it. So any questions, Juanita?
No.
Any public comment from anyone in the Sophie Moise room in the Missoula County Courthouse or online? And this is not in the floodplain. So there we go. Okay, we'll close the public hearing on that. I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve the petition to vacate Peterson Industrial Park utility easement.
I'll second that. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is there any other business to come before the commission today? Seeing none, we will be adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.